And hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Haunted Histories on Now. My guest tonight, I'm actually very excited about speaking to him. He's a very, very well-known historian, and if any of you are into World War II history, you'll know his name. I would say, and I don't know if he'd agree with this, he can nod his head because he's not on mic yet. If he is probably one of the go-to for World War II history when people are looking for documentaries, and he's smiling, so I'm taking that as a yes. He's someone whose books I've read loads of. I've even made my husband read them, and my husband doesn't read, so he's enjoyed the books as well. And when I mentioned to a mutual friend of ours, Paul Woodage, who does the brilliant World War II TV over on YouTube, which if you haven't checked it out, check it out. He said, have you got a wish list of any places you'd like to talk about on Haunted Histories? And I said, yes, Scampton, RAF Scampton. I would give my left kidney to get into RAF Scampton to investigate it. And he said, you should have a word with Jim. I was like, Jim? Jim who? He went, Jim Holland. Oh, you mean James Holland? Okay, yeah, the historian, the TV guy. Yeah, okay. And he said, nah, drop him an email. He'll be willing to help. And I got one straight back from him saying, I'd love to come and talk to you about RAF Scampton. And here he is, Mr. James Holland.
Well, thank you, Penny.
It's true. It's all true.
I never need any second invitation to talk about Scampton. It has to be said.
I'm a bit like that, actually. If someone says, do you want to talk about Guy Gibson? Yeah. Any chance to talk about Guy Gibson, and I'm quite happy. Now, you're a very well-known historian. You've done World War II is your speciality. The first question I want to ask is, why World War II?
Well, I mean, it's just such an amazing episode of human drama, isn't it? It's very, very hard to rival here in the West, I think. And I don't know. I mean, I was sort of quite into it when I was a nipper, and then I kind of sort of lost interest, like most teenagers. You know, you only sort of see as, you know, what you can see in front of your nose, really, don't you? So I kind of lost interest. And then I was in my late 20s, and I was playing cricket, and I was at the non-strikers end. I wasn't batting, and suddenly there was this roar somewhere over mid-wicket. And I looked out, and there was this plane doing all these amazing acrobatics and things. Mm-hmm. And I turned to the umpire and I said, God, what is that? And he went, that's a Spitfire. And that was the Damascene moment, really. And literally the following weekend was Flying Legends at Duxford, and I got my ass up there, went up to Duxford, and just sort of, you know, it was just in 7th Hem, and yeah, it came from there, really. And so I first started writing I wrote a plan to write a novel set to a backdrop of Battle of Britain. I interviewed loads of Battle of Britain veterans for it, not least Jeff Wellham, but a whole load of others as well, Maurice Manston and various others. Wow. And yeah, that's how I sort of got into it, really. And I just find it endlessly fascinating. I still find, you know, I've been doing it for sort of best part of 20 years now, and I still find it endlessly fascinating. You know, the human drama, of course, it's that idea of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, I think. Yes. I think it's very interesting. And, you know, you imagine what you'd have done if you'd been alive and 20 in 1940 or whatever. And but it's also the nitty gritty of it, you know. So it's also the detail, the granular of whys and wherefores and how it all works and how it all fits together. I think that's something that it's such an immense subject that you've got a lifetime to study this. The
minutiae of history, any history really, once you start,
right.
I my specialist subject, well, I mean, I've got probably two, is World War II aviation, especially bombers, but also the workhouse movement, Victorian workhouse movement. But even doing a show like Haunted Histories, I delve into so many different things.
Of course.
I get down that, I mean, you must do it with your podcast that you do with Al Murray, better off known as the pub landlord. I mean, when I've listened to how eloquent and intelligent he is, I struggle to put the two people together.
Yeah, no, he's incredibly well read on all this stuff. Isn't he? I mean, you know, he's absolutely voracious reader, and you know, he's a sort of man after my own heart, because, you know, he goes out and walks the ground and loves all that kind of practical side of things as well, the experiential level. But yeah, I mean, it's I mean, you know, sort of feel incredibly lucky, really, to be doing it, because it's just, as I say, I just find it endlessly fascinating.
I must admit, I'm very jealous of the places you get to visit. All of them. I want your job. I want your job. If you're ever poorly one day and you need someone to step in, just give me a shout, because I'll do it for free.
Okay,
you keep the money, I'll do it.
It's a deal.
But yeah, so the minutiae of it, and that's what's fascinating about a lot of these things. I mean, you think you know them, but then when you start researching, either for a book or to film something, or even to do like a podcast, you start finding these little nitty gritty things like people's names, or the fact that someone met someone else that you never knew, and it just opens up this whole new sort of, you know, range of experiences. It's never ending. You never know it all.
No, absolutely not. Well, I always have this discussion with my brother a little bit, because he's mainly a classicist, and you know, the sources are limited. You know, if you're studying ancient Rome, there's a limit to how much. I mean, perhaps not archaeological, but you know, certainly
documented.
There is absolutely a limit, and whereas obviously with the Second World War, you know, it is limitless.
Yeah, a friend of mine is she studied crumbs. I can never remember what it was called, but ancient history. And she always says, I'm a cop-out because I study more modern stuff, so it's easier for me to do my research.
Well,
I don't know if that's quite true.
But, you know, well, I think it is to a degree. Well, I don't think it's easy to research, but you've got more choice to help you draw your conclusions, I suppose.
Yeah. So, you know, it was a Spitfire that really got you into World War II and everything else. I get that. That's probably quite a conventional route. Mine was actually more Lancasters. I've always loved Lancasters. I still get goosebumps when I see a Lancaster, or see the Lancaster fly past.
So you didn't see it when the Canadian one came over a few years back? They had two over for one summer. It was fantastic. My friend of mine, Richard Lake, he funded it. There was a flying Canadian Lancaster, and they flew it across the Atlantic, and for one summer.
Wow!
I think when was it? 2015, I think it was, or 14, something like that. They had two Lancasters flying over the UK for the whole summer.
I remember hearing about it, not hearing, but hearing about it. Now, my sort of claim to fame with aircraft and stuff is that when I was about 13 or 14. And with school sports, out in the playing fields, playing sport, I'd read that the BBMF flight was landing at Norwich Airport because they had the longest runway for the Lanc to land at. And we were outside, and you could just hear this boom coming, like the earth is shaking. And there's loads of kids going, oh my God, we're under attack and everything. And I went, it's the Lancaster. No, don't be stupid. I went, it's a Lancaster. And yeah, and the Lanc and the Hurry and the Spit came over, and I said, there's the Hurricane, there's the Spitfire, that's a Lancaster. And I was like, what would you know? You're a girl. And then they obviously found out it was true, but the boom, the ground shook as it came for us, because where I
imagine what it must have been like if you've got sort of 3 squadrons,
exactly
kind of 800 Lancasters going over in the stream.
This is actually a conversation my husband and I have on when we were watching the Dambusters film, and we were saying how it must have been to be in that flight path, and when and all of that kind of thing. And I know how excited I got when I was in the flight path for the RAF centenary flight.
Right.
So I got all of those coming over, and I got the Typhoons actually forming up into the 100 pretty much from my house.
Wow.
And the noise from I actually was in my garden. I've got a photo of it. I was in my garden jumping up and down, screaming in excitement. And it's a middle-aged woman, mother of 2, getting that excited about aeroplanes. But you couldn't actually hear me because the noise of these fighters forming up. But yes, I very inappropriate, but I'd probably wet myself with excitement if I saw a whole squadron of Lancasters. But yeah, so mine was Lancasters. And when I found out about the thing we're going to be talking about, Dambusters, which if you listen to this show, the day this show is going out is 78 years ago to the day, because it was a Monday, James has informed me, that those that returned on that mission actually returned. And out of the 19 aircraft that flew, 11 returned to Scampton.
Yep.
Now, I've done research on quite a lot of different. I mean, one of the other areas I've done quite a lot of research on, although this is American, was the Castle mission, the Castle raids for RAF Tibenham, because Tibenham is I've been going there since I was about 4 years old. I actually wrote. I think I'm the first investigator to do a paranormal investigation of Tibenham as well. So, and I mean, their loss rate was worse than that. But you're getting a lot of loss on an elite mission. Now, that alone, it puts shivers down your spine when you think of the amount of men, and it was men, I'm not being sexist, it was men who died, who were in the aircraft. But it does then make you think of what's been left, what's still there. Now, when I asked you if you would be a guest on my show, I must admit, I get two responses from historians normally. Firstly, don't be daft, it doesn't exist, the paranormal's not real. And then others that go, tell me about it. What's your view on the paranormal in general? As a historian?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I exactly believe in ghosts, but I have seen things that I can't explain.
Ooh.
So they've both been out, when I've been out on walks. I've seen people and they've just suddenly not been there shortly afterwards, and I, you know, the kind of pragmatist in me kind of fights against anything like that. But I can't explain what happened to them or where they disappeared to, because one minute they were there and they were, you know, in both cases, well, one of the cases they were acting very oddly. So there was a guy kind of just with an old Mac and a trilby, and he was hunched and he was looking down on the ground, and he was just walking around in a circle in the corner of a field, and it was a big sort of open slope on one side, and then the leeward side of the hill was fenced fields. And as we were walking up towards the top of this hill, we saw no one. I mean, there was no way that he could have got there without us seeing him. And he wasn't there when we were first on the top of the hill. And we just glanced across and said, gosh, look at that bloke. That's really, really weird. I wonder what he's doing there. And then we watched him for a bit and we just wondered what he was doing. And then looked back and there was just no one there. And I literally can't explain it. And I was with someone else. So it wasn't as though it was just me imagining things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know whether it's a memory or something. I mean, you know, too many people have seen things to kind of completely dismiss it. But as I say, there's a large part of me that kind of believes that when you're dead, and that's that.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of theories. We've only got sort of.
I don't know. I'm open-minded.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to know. That's good to
know.
Well,
you know, but you know, another friend of mine who was just, you know, I mean, he was a beer drinking, you know, rugby playing lad. You know, they had a poltergeist in their house. I mean, they you know, they'd have curtains kind of sort of, you know, along the ceiling and stuff. And yeah, you know, it was no one was imagining this. I mean, it was happening.
No, it's I quite like what
and the next door house where I grew up used to be lived in by Cecil Beaton, the photographer. And it is definitely, there's weird stuff going on there. There's all sorts of weird noises in the night and things happen and strange smells and stuff. It's very weird.
Yeah.
I can't explain it.
See, the thing is with what I always say to historians when they say to me, no, the paranormal doesn't exist. And I think, wouldn't it be great if, I mean, paranormal doesn't necessarily just mean ghosts. It means things that we can't explain. But wouldn't it be great if ghosts do exist? Wouldn't it be great if I could contact, say, I don't know, Dingy Young?
Yes.
Say to him, what was it? What happened? What really was it like? Wouldn't it be great if I could speak to Guy Gibson and say, come on, what happened in that Mosquito? You didn't know where the other switch for the fuel tank was, did you? That's what happened in that Mosquito. That's why it crashed. You weren't taken out by friendly or enemy fire. You were too cocky to find out where that switch was, and you couldn't find it, and you crashed. You know, wouldn't it be amazing if, as a historian, you could get that first-hand information from people who were actually going through it at the time? And that's kind of where I come from it, as doing what I do, because although I'm classed as a historian, I come in when you get paranormal people making all these claims about a place, that this place was 300 people died here in 1828, which is quite easy to verify. And not one person died there in 1828, let alone 300. And you can, you know, but you can say, well, actually, no, they didn't. But did you know this happened there? Or did you know this happened there? So it's giving them validation. And also, I mean, I think one of my best experiences was, I was at Highlands House in Chelmsford, which I'm sure you know was L Detachment, was the SAS headquarters during World War II. And using a device called Novelus, which is some kind of word generator, I had a full name come up. And when we said, where did you die? It gave us a location, everything else. And I thought, that's not real. I found the guy, full name and everything, and he was Royal Marine Commando, and he died in exactly. So when things like that happen, it's quite it does still send a shiver up my spine. But Scampton is meant to be very, very active.
It's meant. Is it? I didn't know that.
Yes, it is.
I don't know. I do slightly believe in the feel of. I always feel that you have happy houses and sad houses.
Yes.
So and I can't explain it, but houses do have a kind of vibe, don't they? And places have buildings have a vibe.
Yeah.
And you can go in places and for no particular reason, and it seems absolutely completely illogical, you just don't feel comfortable there for whatever reason it is. So it was very weird. I remember the first time I went to Scampton. I'm not suggesting for a moment that Guy Gibson's office was haunted, but when I first went there, it had slightly gone to rack and ruin. And although you could still go to his office, it was all over the place. It's all been tarted up now and put back as it was pretty much when he was there, as a sort of museum piece. But it wasn't back then. It was really all over the place, and there was a very weird atmosphere there. Again, I'm not even remotely suggesting that was the spirit of Guy Gibson or anything like that. It's just it had a vibe. It really, really did. It was kind of spooky.
Wow. That is music to my ears, James.
Oh, well, there you go.
I think, yeah, the things that actually, the hauntings or the reported hauntings at Scampton actually go back to 1918 when it was, what was it called before it was Scampton? It had another name. Pardon?
I don't know, North Lincoln or something like that?
No, Brattleby. It was originally an airfield called Brattleby. It's in your book.
Is it? Well, I forgot that.
It's in this.
Is it? Okay. Well, then it must be true.
No, I did double check as well because I'd forgotten what it was called and I knew it was called something else. So it changed in 1917 to Scampton, and it was RFC and then RAF. Yeah, One of the earliest accounts was in 1918 when and this account was actually given to the Society of Cyclical Research, which is the paranormal society that actually people like Conan Doyle and stuff were part of this pilot who he was taking a Camel Sopwith, I believe, to Tadcaster, and the guy said he came back early and sort of said, "Yeah, I'm done, blah blah blah," and then he finds out 3 hours later that the guy had actually died and hadn't come back, but he saw him, and there was independent. And this was actually in this is a this. I think it was a second lieutenant or something, documented it, that having had this conversation with this pilot. Goodness. So, things like that is not unusual in airfields, which is why I love investigating them, because there's so much there.
What's something incredibly romantic about ghosts, isn't there? It's spooky, but it's romantic as well. Yeah, definitely. It's sort of, it's slightly gothic, isn't it? And I mean, have you been watching the comedy series Ghosts? Oh, yes. I mean, I love that program.
Brilliant. I've actually got my parents into it.
It's so fantastic. It's so charming, but it's also, it is very, very funny, but it's also very moving, isn't it, at times?
Very, very. Well, I actually write for Haunted magazine, and they did an interview with the guys from Ghosts not so long back, because even paranormal people love that series, who, even though when they did the ghost hunting episode where the ghost hunters came in, and my husband's like, "You're not like that when you do it." And I went, "No, I know, but it's, and it's the thought of that there's all these spirits lining around sort of laughing at us and going, 'Get out of my house.' And I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliantly done.
So good. Do you remember when Pat's family came back? Oh, it's incredible. And it was the stump of the tree that his bus had gone into when he
and the kid who shot him was at the wedding as an adult. The kid who shot him through the net.
Episode, and really moving.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely those guys are so talented, those guys who wrote it. I mean, obviously
they're the Horrible History team, aren't they?
Yeah,
I think they're doing another series, aren't they?
What, Ghosts?
Yeah.
Yes, they've just finished filming it according to their Twitter accounts. No,
hooray.
I say I got my parents into it. My mum was very much, "I don't believe in all that. Mum, just watch it."
You don't need to, just watch it.
And they're addicted. I think they watched the Christmas special first and were like, "Actually, this is quite good." And so went back and watched the rest. So yes, I do watch that. But I think the most common sighting at Scampton is of, I can't say the dog's name because this goes out in America and I'll get in trouble.
Well, let's just say Guy Gibson's Black Labrador.
Guy Gibson's Black Labrador.
Or chocolate brown Labrador, whichever one he was.
Dark Labrador. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, he is the most commonly seen spirit there.
Is that so? I didn't know that.
Yes. People have actually reported, and you'll know the relevance of this, people have reported having their drinks drunk out of in areas where he's meant to go.
Yes, well, of course, he famously used to drink the weekend beer.
Exactly. You know, this is something that a lot of people think I'm joking when I tell them, but no, there's.
I mean, it might have been one of the reasons why he's run over, because he was half cut at the time.
Probably. But even then, there's a conspiracy with that, isn't there? Was he actually run over by accident, or had somebody found out about Chastise, Operation Chastise, which is the technical term for the Dambusters raids, and actually targeted the dog to try and throw Gibson off?
Oh, I don't believe that for a minute. I think that's absolute nonsense.
No,
dog wandering around a camper, everything's, lights out, and probably the dog just went out in front of it. There's lots of traffic going around.
Yeah,
I don't believe that. I don't believe those kind of conspiracy theories. I think they're all nonsense.
You don't think it was a malicious?
No. I mean, his dog was given, run of the place. There's lots of traffic about. It's very, very easy to do, particularly when the dog is drinking beer, frankly.
So people who work there have actually reported seeing their drinks sort of reduce when nobody's there and just watch them. There's also been people who have used digital recorders and picked up a dog barking in what would have been Gibson's office and growling at them.
Amazing.
Although I don't know if you're a dog person.
I am.
You are a dog person. I know I've seen you out walking with another historian we know who has black Labradors.
Yes, he's got lots of them.
He's got lots of them. Yeah, I can love seeing those photos. And I'm a dog person. I don't know many black labs that growl, if I'm completely honest.
Oh, they do. They can do that. They're mostly.
Mine never did.
But also, it's not a growl. It's a kind of it's a sort of low rumble, which suggests that there's someone around and they're just being protective. That's not quite the same as growling.
So I used to.
There's not kind of gums back and
falling
teeth and
I'm going to eat you. Yeah. I had a lab cross golden retriever until last year, and I think I had a growl twice in 14 years.
Well, I would say that my black lab had probably growled only twice in 14 years as well. But
people have picked it up. They've picked up this.
Okay, well, that's great.
Growling. Now, also the interesting one I found is apparently in the Dambusters film, Todd Dambusters film, towards the end when those that returned, the 11 that returned have returned, and he's talking to Barnes Wallace.
Yes, Michael Redgrave, yeah.
Apparently, and I haven't checked this yet because I only found it out this morning when I was just reading up some other bits. If you look in the film, there is the sighting of a dog running in the trees, and there was a dog on site.
Wow.
Now I'm going to go away and double check this because I've got the film, and I'm going to.
Yeah, God, I haven't seen the movie for such a long time.
Yeah, I watched it the other day. Actually, preparing for this, I watched it because I just thought, it's so good. It's so good. So the dog's been seen. There's reports that I'm going to double.
Oh, well, let me know how you get on with that. I'd love to know.
Am I encouraging you to do an investigation at Scampton yet, James?
Well, I wouldn't know what to do. I mean, I'd sort of wander around sort of feeling spooked. My brother and I, when we were little, we were convinced there was a ghost of a Roman centurion up this lane called Church Bottom. So we'd sort of get up very early and kind of, I would swear I saw that figure on the horizon and all that kind of stuff. And we'd just sort of spook ourselves, basically. But of course, we never saw anything. I'd say.
Was that in Wiltshire?
Yeah.
Which is plausible, isn't it? Because Wiltshire had.
It's plausible. Very, very big Roman area around here. But I mean, I love all this stuff. I'm not a closed book. I'm not completely open to it, but I'm not completely close to it either. But
so, technical type question. So we mentioned that 8 of the aircraft were lost. With, I think 53 men died and 3 were taken POW. I have to say, even though I'm a Guy Gibson girl, I do love Les Munro. I think he sounds a bit of a monkey. Did you actually get to meet him?
I did, several times. I went and interviewed him at great length down in New Zealand.
Wow.
He invited me to his home. We went out for dinner and hung out. And he was an absolute, a total legend. He was a wonderful fellow.
Oh,
he was compassionate, but he was also tough.
Yeah.
And he was gentle, but he was also hard. And his memory was incredibly good. And he looked and acted a lot younger than he actually was. And he just had an incredible life. I mean, that background, sort of growing up in the late 1920s and 30s, farming life in New Zealand, then that whole sort of putting it all to one side and moving overseas, and I think he went via the US where he was training, and then eventually to Britain, and 97 Squadron I think he was in, and then eventually 617. But he was just fantastic. He was just tough, and he didn't kind of, he just said it as it was. He didn't a lot of people, when you talk to them, they've obviously read things subsequently, so they transpose stuff that they've read into their own memories, and he didn't do that. He'd obviously thought about his experience and was able to kind of sort of analyze them. So he was particularly fascinating. And then I saw him a few years later, and he suddenly looked really, really old. He'd suddenly aged a lot. And he passed away not long after, to be honest.
But it's the story, I think I read it in your book, and they were coming back, and I can't remember who it was coming in for an emergency landing because he'd damaged the undercarriage, and the bomb aimer, I think it was the bomb aimer, said he suddenly looked down and saw another Lancaster coming underneath him at about 40 foot.
Yes, so that was Johnny Johnson, and
that's it.
Yeah, well, he wasn't damaged. They'd just been practicing bombing in
right.
up in the Wash, which is where they had their kind of bombing ranges, and they'd practice there. And and Johnny Johnson's crew, the pilot was very keen on kind of, they were supposed to practice at kind of no more than 100 feet.
Yeah.
Because that's what they'd be flying on the actual dams range.
With the two spotlights that they'd have come together over the wall.
Yeah, but this was daylight stuff, so they were just getting used to the idea of operating at 100 feet. And you have to remember that normally they're doing bombing operations from sort of 18,000 feet plus 24,000, something like that. So really, really high. So to suddenly go from that down to operating at 100 feet is just a massive,
phenomenal.
Well, it's a very different type of flying.
And this is a 30-ton aircraft.
Yes, which has a wingspan of 102 feet.
100 feet. Yeah, I mean,
so 100 feet is not very high at all. If you think a sort of telegraph pole is sort of probably 60 foot, something like that. So it's really, really not very high. And anyway, they were doing this. They were over the Wash, over that kind of area around there, the Fens, and Johnny was a bomb aimer, so he was looking down, and a plane went underneath him, and. He said, well, we're all convinced it was Les Munro, and of course he denied it. And so when I interviewed Les, I said, there was this rumor of that, and he said, yeah, probably, yeah, mate, yeah.
Sounds the sort of thing I would do.
Yeah. and Johnny Johnson's pilot, he said that he was actually below 100 foot because to make sure that they were definitely no more than 100 foot, they erred on the side of caution. They were probably more like 80 to 100 to 90 foot.
Yeah. But it makes me laugh because Mickey Martin was meant to be the low-flying expert. I'm like, possibly Les Munro could have taken that.
Well, I suppose you've got to remember these guys are experienced for the most part, not all of them, but most of them are pretty experienced in 617 Squadron. And they're young, and you kind of feel slightly immortal, I think.
I think you have to, though, to do that.
And I think you know what you're about with a Lancaster by that stage.
Yeah.
So Les Munro knows what he's about. There's nothing around. It's flat. It's dangerous and stupid, but they're young guys.
But I think you have to have that sense of immortality to do that job, because if you're worrying about dying every 2 minutes, and yes, you must think about it. But I mean, when you're talking about them being young guys, and I mean, you've got like all their nicknames are Hoppy Hopgood. You've got Dingy Young, whose nickname was Dingy Young because apparently he had a tendency to like to crash into water.
Well, he'd had to ditch twice because he was doing. First of all, he was flying for. If I remember rightly, he was flying coastal command operations, and then second one was in the Mediterranean, if I remember rightly. And and he had to ditch his aircraft for whatever reason and get out the inflatable dinghy.
But the irony wasn't he a champion rower? Wasn't he an
Yes, he was. Yes,
he was a blue or something.
Blue,
and
yes, he was.
Someone said to him, if you want to practice your rowing, there's easier ways to do it than crashing a 30-ton bomber. Which I just love. Those are the sort of stories to me that make things less. They're the stories I tell children when I'm trying to teach them history. These kind of things to make it humorous, and so they remember. I compiled the list of all the crews and looking at their ages, also looking at how international they were. I mean, so many Canadians and everything else, which I think sometimes we forget because we think Aussies,
and of course New Zealanders like Les Munro.
Yeah, exactly. I think when I compiled the list, it's predominantly British, then Canadian, then Aussie, and then New Zealanders. But I think we forget because we hear the sort of Guy Gibson voice or the Bomber Harris voice or the Barnes Wallis voice, and we think it was all a British thing. So wasn't. So many different nationalities part of it, and that was before the Poles started to come in and help us with bombing missions and all of that.
That's right.
When we look at some of the ages of some of these guys, this is what blows my mind when I look at 20, 21. The fact that Gibson was 25 when he was dealing.
He was 24.
24.
I know it's nothing, is it?
I can't.
That's absolutely nothing. He's a wing commander, and
you're wing commander, and you're in charge.
We're sort of 72 bomber operations and a further 100 night operations. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I know as well in your book. I think it was it Charlie Williams?
Charlie Williams, yeah, from
his story.
England,
now that must have been quite a common story of them finding someone, falling in love, and then not coming back.
Yep,
terrible. All these kind of energies, which, I mean, one of the things that frustrates me when I've seen, there's been a few investigations done at Scampton, not done the way I would do them personally, but they've been done. And one of them was adamant. She was talking to Maggie, Guy Gibson's, and I'm putting this in air barks, girlfriend.
Yeah.
Now, Guy was actually married to an actress called Eve. Had been for quite a while, even though he was young, he had been married for quite a while. Now, and there's this belief that he was a bit of a ladies' man, and that he had this girlfriend called Maggie, who was a nurse.
Maggie North.
She was WAF, wasn't she? A WAF nurse or something along those lines.
She was. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So she kind of understood what he was having to deal with. But she was seeing the, broken men on a daily basis in her job. She probably had a little bit more security clearance than the average woman as well. One of my pet hates is when people target certain people on an investigation. They don't wait for the person to tell them their name. They say, "Oh, I'm talking to this person. I'm talking to that person." I tend to hang back. But when we're talking about Guy, he is one of my heroes. But then again, so is Leonard Cheshire. Two very different people. Do you think some of the stuff that's written about Guy, that he was reckless, that he was a ladies' man, that I read somewhere that someone said that he had all he wanted was the mission to be a success. He didn't care about loss of his men, things like that. Now, you've obviously know quite a lot about this time, and do you think any of those comments have any validity at all?
Not really, no. I think Guy Gibson is a very, very complex individual. He's very psychologically scarred from his childhood. So he's had a very, very distant father. He was much older, austere, had absolutely no relationship with his mother whatsoever. Mother came back to England, hit the bottle, was in and out of sort of, psychiatric care. So that's also something that can be passed down through the bloodstream, effectively, through the genes. And, Guy Gibson sort of packed off to boarding school at a very young age. He was small. He was kind of sort of slightly cocky. He was completely unexceptional at school. He wasn't bad at class, but he wasn't particularly good. He was sort of second 11 rather than first.
Yeah.
He was just so completely middle of the road. Then he just subsequently found that kind of flying was something that he wasn't even particularly exceptional pilot. It was more that he just had he had luck with him, and he had staying power, and he had these sort of inner reserves of resolve and determination, which I think are really, really quite remarkable. And he was a very, very screwed up individual, and he got married to Eve because his mother had effectively set fire to herself while she was drunk with the electric heater, and died horribly. He's very close to his brother, who was his only real family. But what Eve offered was obviously, physical comfort, but also maternal comfort as well.
Yeah, she was about 8-9 years older than him, wasn't she?
Yeah, the older woman who was sort of confident, the rest of it. And I think Guy Gibson sort of put on this show of being incredibly self-confident, but actually he wasn't. I think he was. I think it was a massive act. And it's very interesting. I remember talking to Winkle Brown, who was Eric Winkle Brown, who was a sort of probably our sort of greatest aviator we've ever had, legendary test pilot. And he was saying that he'd met Guy Gibson when he was doing some work on the Lancaster, and Guy Gibson had said to him, do you ever get scared when you get in a plane? And Eric had said, no, because I always know what I'm about and I make sure I prepare properly beforehand. And Gibson said to him, well, you're very lucky because I'm absolutely petrified every time I set foot in one.
Really?
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is he was completely overflown. He was washed out. He should never have been given command of 617 Squadron. He was washed out by the time he finished with 106 Squadron in March 1943. And what Maggie North did, I think it was platonic, but what Maggie North did, Maggie understood, because she was a nurse. She knew what to say and what not to say, and he could be himself with her. I think that was the key. So they had this fantasy bubble where they created this kind of sort of, they were going to, it was kind of honeysuckle cottage, wasn't it? It was sort of beautiful little cottage, and they were going to have little poppets about, and life was going to be perfect. The sun was always going to be shining, and it was an entirely fantasy world. And I think the point about the relationship that Gibson has with Maggie North is it's a very deep and profound understanding. There's a friendship there. He can only find solace by being with her because she understands, she gets it. He doesn't have to put on this kind of bonhomie, this bravado, this braggadocio, which he does when he is Guy Gibson, the squadron commander. It's completely different. He can be himself. And I think that's why it's so intense. And yet he can't. What he should do is marry Maggie, but he doesn't, because he's married to Eve and he's squadron commander and his pride and the rest of his world won't allow that.
Yeah.
And so he agonizes over it and says, oh, don't get married to this person you're going to get married to. And, what about me? But it's too late. He hasn't got, funny enough, he didn't have the kind of moral courage to sort of go through with that, which is really, really interesting, because he's one thing you could not say about Gibson is he's certainly not lacking for courage. No. So by the time he takes command of 617 Squadron, he's already absolutely washed out. There is no way today that he would have been given that command, not under any circumstances. No. And what's incredible is that while everyone else is having to train for this incredibly complex mission, which involves flying in a completely different way to anything they've done before. He is having to go down south and watch trials at Reculver. He's having to go and talk to Barnes Wallis. He's getting much less practice than everybody else. And yet when the mission comes on the evening of the 17th of May, 1943, does he dig deep. Somewhere in his inner core, he really commands that squadron. He is over there. He is organizing. They've got special VHF radios, which they're all linked together in a way that they wouldn't normally be on a normal bomber mission. He's absolutely controlling every aspect of that mission, over the Myrna Dam and then subsequently to the Ada Dam. All those who've dropped their upkeeps, their bombs on the Myrna Dam, they're encouraged to go home. He then leads the rest over to the Ada Dam, which is not easy to find, particularly at night. It wasn't easy to find at 500 feet when I flew over it in the middle of daytime. It's certainly not easy to find at night time with little kind of mists in the valleys and all the rest of it.
Was that 2011 you made that program when you flew over it with that?
Yeah, well, I flew over it before when I was researching the book. So I did it first with just a sort of harder plane and a pilot to take me over. But I just don't know how he did it. I really don't know how he did it. And the truth of the matter is, when he's flying in the Mosquito, it's almost a death wish. It sort of isn't quite, but it almost is. He feels this profound guilt that he's still there. He is mentally unfit to be flying, and which is why he's been grounded. But he flies anyway.
Yeah.
And so he's got this profound guilt at still being alive, while others have died.
Yeah.
And it's made him reckless. You know, he is not of sound mind. I mean, he's never been flying that Mosquito. So the fact that he crashes because he doesn't switch over the fuel tanks is just, it's not because he's being arrogant. It's because he's a seriously screwed up person.
There's more to that I will tell you off air, that I've been told by someone who knew his engineer.
Yeah. Right. Well, his engineer, yeah, and his navigator obviously died with him.
Yes. No, he knew the engineer who, but I'll tell you that off air because I don't want to get sued by any case. It's not true. But this was an account I've told by someone who was actually at an airfield where the Mosquitoes were based in Norfolk. But that's by the by. So we've got this flawed hero, for want of a better term, who, like you say,
but the greatest heroes are flawed. You know, the Achilles heel. You know, and that's what makes him so. I think makes him such a compelling character.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, what he does on the night of the Dams raid is, in spite of mental scars, physical scars as well. He's got piles. The medical officer said you really shouldn't be flying.
Didn't he have gout as well?
Yeah, not piles. He's got gout. That's it. He's got gout. And you know, he's not well. You know, he's absolutely not well, and yet he still digs deep. You know, he is a bit of a martinet, but that's because of a whole host of other, you know, all sorts of, you know, he's got these huge psychological scars. I mean, he's a very, very screwed up individual.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes him such a great figure and so worthy of his Victoria Cross, is because his achievements are remarkable anyway. But they're even more remarkable when you think what he has to overcome to achieve them. You know, it's not just, you know, there are people like, you know, Leonard Cheshire. I don't think he felt fear. I think he just was. You know, leadership came very naturally to him. He had this charmed life. You know, he was incredibly clever. He was incredibly talented. He was just brimming with charm. He had that innate ability to talk to all walks. You know, it was almost second nature to him. You know, Gibson had to confront a vast number of demons to get to where he got to, which makes his achievements, I think, all the more remarkable.
Oh, Gibson is I say it is a bit of a standing joke amongst friends. I've been doing this show now 4 years, and I used to get people messaging me saying, "This is Guy Gibson, loved your show today," because they know I'm such a massive fan of. It's possible to have a crush on a dead person.
Yeah,
a crush on him. I think he's amazing. But having learned more about Leonard Cheshire and what he developed as a pilot and the way he approached things, I've got a lot of admiration for him as well. I mean, to be honest, I've got admiration for all of the guys who were willing to get into machines. And, you know, when you think of, all right, Spitfire pilot, A, it's easier to get out of trouble in a Spitfire, and B, it's only you have to worry about. Whereas when you're in one of those or the, you know, a Flying Fortress or a Liberator, or you've got all these other men's lives, impossible to get out of one of those things if you're crashing.
Yeah.
You've got to try and look after them. I think that kind of responsibility, especially on these young guys, is hard to imagine. And it does make sense why so many of them go back to the airfields as spirit form. You know, it makes sense to me why apparently before the control tower was changed, Guy Gibson was reported to be seen walking around it.
Wow. That
makes sense to me, because I've heard lots of accounts of station commanders and senior flying officers, for want of a better term, you know, being in, and when I've investigated control towers, yes, you can almost feel someone walking past you at the top. If you go out where they would have looked, you can feel someone brush past you. So I think that is quite a common thing. Now, what do you think would have been the question I've written down is, how many aircraft would have been acceptable to have lost from not from Gibson's perspective, but from, say, Bomber Command and everyone else? How many aircraft would they have deemed acceptable to lose? How many lives would they have been willing to sacrifice for Chastise?
I think the whole lot.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they don't want to, but I mean, you know, no one is under any illusion that Chastise is an extremely hazardous operation. You know, just forget anti-aircraft guns and enemy. Just getting there at night in a Lancaster with a, you know, 4-ton bomb
strapped underneath you. Yeah.
At that height, there's just so many things that can go wrong. You know, Les Munro gets hit because they've been given the wrong weather briefing, and so you know they're having to navigate by dead reckoning, and you know they haven't taken account for the wind, so they're off where they should cross, so they get hit by flat guns which shouldn't have been there, but they are because they've drifted south. You know, Charlie Williams dies because they hit telegraph cables. You know, they're that low. Very, very easy to do, you know, and what you have to remember is that when you're at that height, your horizon is very short, so you haven't got much time to kind of make mistakes. You know, if you've made a mistake, there's not much time to correct it. So I think everyone knew that this was going to be extremely dangerous and extremely difficult, but it's worth the punt because not very many people are involved. 19 is a lot, but you know there were plenty of bomber command raids where the raiding party lost more than that.
Well, Castle. I know that wasn't bomber command, but American bombers.
No, absolutely. So you know, everyone hoped it would be a success and that everyone would come back, but I think there was a level of expectation that you know it was just impossible to hope that people wouldn't get killed in the process.
Well, next time you go to Scampton, I'll give you some to ask when you're in the room and see if it generates anything.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I haven't been out there for a few years actually, but
we'll need to arrange a trip up there then.
Exactly.
I'll do the ghosty bit. You do the history bit there because history is
fantastic
in these places. If you say recited some kind of orders or whatever, you'd be amazed what sometimes happens. Honestly, it seems to just switch an on button to trigger.
Amazing. Well, I'm agog.
Well, we'll sort it out, James. We'll sort it out.
Fantastic.
So, I have to say goodbye to James in a minute, but before I do, what I do want to say is you won't be able to see this, obviously, if you're listening, but if this goes into my little outtakes video, if you want to read more on the Dambusters, I can recommend James's book, The Dambusters, The Race to Smash the Dams, 1943. It's absolutely brilliant. And
Thank you, Penny.
He's a basic writer. It's easy read. Some history books can be a bit, when you're trying to read them, even as a historian, sometimes it's he'll know what I mean. It's sometimes a bit of a, oh God, this is hard work to read. This one is easy to read. It flows, it tells a story. As do all of James's books, because another one of yours I've read is the Malta.
Oh, yes.
I visited Malta, and that's another fascinating, that's a story for another day. Another book I would recommend reading if you want to learn more about this is Guy Gibson's book. Enemy.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good.
Now,
I agree with that.
He covers Dambusters in chapter 16. It's called Squadron X, is where he starts with the Dambuster stuff. I would recommend reading that because, he wrote it. Whether he wrote it or he...
No, he wrote it.
He did. I didn't know whether he had a ghostwriter and he had someone...
No, he wrote it.
He was saying. But it's very interesting. It's really interesting from a bomber pilot's perspective on everything. What have you got coming up where people can sort of find, hear you speak? Have you got any new episodes of We Have Ways?
Yes, We Have Ways is a sort of machine. We Have Ways. You can find it on Acast, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get. It's called We Have Ways of Making You Talk, and that actually comes out three times a week. So it's a lot.
And any new books on the horizon that you're working on?
Yes, I've just finished a book called Brothers in Arms, which is sort of a bit sort of Band of Brothersy, but it's following a British tank regiment from D-Day all the way to VE Day. Very different book to anything I've written before, and I'm really, really find it fascinating doing that. So that comes out in September. Sicily book comes out in paperback in I think next month. So brilliant. Always plenty going on.
Well, James has got books out that are both for kids and adults. You've got fiction and non-fiction. So whatever you want,
Kate all needs
sorts it. Now, before you go, James, I am going to let you go in a second. I have been looking at whatever it is, the iron behind you. They guns.
Oh yeah, no. So this is a Bren gun here, and then I've got a Lee Enfield, British a number 1 Mark III, and then I've got a K98, which is a Mauser breech.
Wow.
German rifle. Yeah.
So no one's breaking into your house.
Well, they don't work. I mean, they're all deactivated. But
They wouldn't
yeah,
know.
no, I sort of use them for various things. They're fascinating. You know, you just get the sort of feel of it.
Now, those are the things to use as triggers when you go ghost hunting, I have to say.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, thank you so much for being my guest today, James.
Oh, no, well, thank you for having me on. It's
Talking
been
about the Dambusters, we could have talked for another hour, but
easy.
You know, we had to get this fitted in the diary. But if anyone wants to follow what James is up to, he does have a Twitter page which he's quite active on, and also you can follow the We Have Ways pod page and hear what him and Al are up to. Do please follow them. I'm not going to tell you who my next guest is because that's a secret and you'll have to wait and see. But thank you ever so much for listening. And don't forget, have a good evening, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.